some of the platforms that your own organization is using. Susan, you're able to bring up the other slide deck. Great. So initially, when we were talking about an online platform, the idea there is that, you know, a lot of people are just thinking about the video part. We're going to talk about that, but we're also going to talk about how that really integrates with everything else that you might be doing in your business, whether you are a one-person business or much larger. There's a lot of things to think about, and that really does start adding into all the decisions about what you're going to use. But starting here with a quote from Lifesize, which is very big in the web conferencing industry, is 89% of people say that video conferencing helps them to feel connected to the people they care about. 98% of respondents also say that video strengthens relationships both outside and inside the company. So as we're working through the coronavirus pandemic and an extreme work from home environment, and people are losing that face-to-face, that water cooler talk, or whatever other types of work relationships that were not really easy to measure, but were facilitated by people being face-to-face, then we are seeing that you know, your video conferencing platform is a communication tool, right? It's not just the video, it's your chat, it's text, it's video calls. How can we communicate better with each other, document sharing, integrating with other tools? And it's just that idea that it goes well above the video, but the video is a really integral part, because just being able to see each other lends so much more to the conversation, because you can see more about how people are interacting. You can see some of the, like I'm moving my hands now, you can see their physical gestures, and it adds a lot of depth and warmth to those conversations, whether it's in between people within your own company or with customers and constituents. So it really does make a difference when you start looking at how that platform integrates with everything. So it does really become what's called a business collaboration platform, not just a video conferencing, although it's the most visible piece of it. Most commonly used platforms, and there's a lot of them out there, but if we look at statistics, what we have is Zoom, who has grown exponentially in December of 2019, before coronavirus pandemic really hit us. They were averaging about 10 million participants in calls on Zoom platform per day. That could have been the same person on a couple of different calls. I don't know why this is moving. Susan, did you that could have been a couple of different calls. But now they hit in April over 300 million, so a 30x increase. Microsoft Teams grew from more of a platform on the Microsoft side with their other tools to the Teams platform hitting over 75 million just in April, and they continue to grow. Webex is pretty deep in the enterprise space at over 300 million already. Google Meet is transformed from what actually used to be called Hangouts, and they already have a pretty well-established base, probably about 100 million on the Google Meet side. And then we have GoToMeeting, which has been around a really long time, and it's a well-established product, but it's probably really losing some market share. So Susan, you had a poll of just kind of asking for who's on here, on who's who's on what platform at this point? Maybe we can take a poll.
Yes, so we have 73% are using Microsoft Teams, 91% are using Zoom, 42% are using Webex, 46 are using GoToMeeting, 21% are using Google Meet, and 13% are using another platform.
Okay, so you can see if you add up those numbers, we have is people are using multiple platforms, right? So you might be using Teams and Zoom, for example. That's why they're not going to probably add up to 100, and that makes sense. So we're using different things for different purposes. Zoom has been really strong on the video space, but some of the other platforms are really amping up what they're doing in that video space, and they're coming up with better video, but also some tighter integration with some of the other pieces of their platform. So, for example, Zoom has the ability to do actually well over 300 participants if you get into their enterprise plans, which are pretty expensive. Susan, I'm not sure why these keep flipping through the slides automatically. So, apologize. These are some of the challenges with technology. Susan, can you flip back to the previous slide? Okay, so right here we have Zoom, which on their free plan, you can get up to 100 participants, but you're limited to about 45 minutes, and then it'll actually cut off your call. So if you want to keep it cheap and just get some quick conversations, especially one-to-one conversations, Zoom you can do unlimited one-to-one or up to 45 minutes with 100 participants at a pretty inexpensively. It goes to 300 with their typical small business plan, and then you can actually scale up over 1,000 if you go to the enterprise plan, but it gets pretty pricey. Microsoft Teams can support up to 300 participants, and these are participants in a meeting. These aren't where you're just talking and you're sort of doing an event. Some of these event numbers can go up well over into the thousands, but this is literally 300 people with their screens being able to share with each other all at the same time. And Teams can do up to 300, where about 6 months ago it wasn't anywhere near that high. So they've really scaled the product very quickly in the last 6 months. Webex can do 200 video. They can do 1,000 participants, but only the first 200 participants can actually do video. The rest can just do a phone call and do audio only. Google Meet can scale up to 250, depending on which plan you have. And GoToMeeting is actually still limited at 26. So you can see how it's one of the more legacy products, but at one point was probably one of the top. On webcams on screen, Zoom has always been one of the top as far as being able to fit on your screen, sort of the Brady Bunch view of 7x7, 49 people on a screen, which has been really, really nice. It's been a huge factor. Teams, on the other hand, at the beginning of the year, could only do 4, literally 2x2, 4 people on the screen. Everybody else was a little dot. And they've since scaled that a couple of times, and they're now at 7x7, competing right with Zoom. And they've also came up with a pretty cool mode called Together, which is kind of cool. If you enable Together mode when you have enough people on, you can actually have, it looks like you're in a lecture hall and everybody else participating sitting in chairs. And the reason for that is actually not just because it's cool, because when we're doing meetings like this and we're trying to watch each other in that Brady Bunch view, we actually get fatigue. And most people within 30 or 40 minutes are starting to really lose that concentration on that meeting, a lot differently than if you were in a actual face-to-face meeting in a conference room. So Together Mode helps deal with that, and it's kind of a neat feature. Webex is still limited to 6 on screen in most of their packages until they do have a webinar package, but again, it's meant more for outbound than for you to all see each other. Google Meet normally does 4. You can get to an unlimited package when you go to their enterprise plan, but you got to pay for it. It gets pretty pricey. And GoToMeeting is still limited at 5x5. So before Zoom was around, again, they had better than anybody, 5x5, but they're kind of standing still. You go to the next slide. So as a collaboration platform, Zoom doesn't have all of the features. They do have some Zoom rooms that you can pay extra for and give you some spaces where you can collaborate with some other people. But it's really its own product, and it's limited. So it's not really doing everything for you. Teams, on the other hand, Microsoft 365 platform is extremely tightly integrated with everything else that they do with their with your email, with their Teams channels, which they have places to collaborate and share documents and lists and a lot of other plugins. So it's become a really strong platform. And we can see, I think I heard 73% you were on Teams. Talk a little bit about what that means, though, because there's some pros and cons to that as well. Webex has a really great platform, but it's all proprietary. It's all their own, and it doesn't really integrate as well with anything else. So most people are already on a platform such as Microsoft 365 for their email and other collaboration, or you're on G Suite. So if you have Webex, there's some overlap, but it's really not an integration. Google Meet is a pretty nice product, and it works even nicer if you're already on Google's G Suite product. So if you're using their collaboration platform, it works even nicer if you're using Google Meet as well, because you can control all of that. And GoToMeeting doesn't really have any of their own collaboration tools. They have a lot of APIs, or basically integrations back into some of these other products. So you have to make them work. So then they haven't really created their own. So on the security side, Zoom has been in the news a lot for having security issues. They're improving. They've rolled out some new pieces, but they're still not doing what they call end-to-end security, where the entire package from beginning to end is encrypted. They have pieces that are encrypted, but not end-to-end. Microsoft's Teams product, though, it starts from a security perspective. They're using integration with their M365 platform, or most people still hear as Office 365, but the names are changing because it's becoming even more than just the Office product. And their Azure Active Directory, which is basically moving to the cloud the security and controls that you typically have on your local network when you have a server and network and all that security within your company. It's all moving to the cloud because a lot of the files and the data for your company are all moving to the cloud. Webex has really great end-to-end security, but again tends to cater more to the enterprise space. Google Meet has some great integration with the security for their own product. And GoToMeeting has security, but it's actually older security, 128-bit, where a lot of the newer products are at 256. So security is top concern. Zoom bombing is one of the good examples of people taking over Zoom conference calls. Now this is a great example of a Zoom bomb. It's a mom jumping in the background. And some of us have those on a impromptu basis when your kid shows up on your screen. needing, because everybody's working from home. But we also have that idea, if you can see down there, that the person who's hopping into the calls, and there's some more interesting examples of this on the web. If you see, people doing things and not realizing they're on camera, or just some more things that'd be inappropriate to put on, but they're happening all the time. So it makes having controls really important. So here's some security tips. Do not publish public links. So the link here was sent out to everybody that participated, but what the link to this wasn't just put out on a website. And then they used a waiting room. So all of you had to check into the waiting room and then be admitted, as opposed to just being able to jump right on the call. So you can control your users. You're gonna lock down users' ability to share a screen. Actually, that's why we're looking at this presentation through the Chamber's computer, because they had us so locked down that I wasn't able to share my screen, and we wanted to make sure we didn't hold everybody up. Restricting recording and resharing of information. So you don't want any of your participants just to be able to record or reshare without making sure you have right controls in place. And usually you can lock down those settings. So some of these are really basic settings that anybody should be able to just go in and turn on or adjust. But most of the time when we're seeing problems, it's because somebody just didn't do any of that. So really some basic things, go through those settings. Defining roles. I apologize, I'm not sure why the presentation just keeps flipping on its own. Defining roles, privileges, and guest access. So you want to make sure that if you invite guests, what access do they have, especially if it's on a collaboration platform? Can they see all the files and information that's related to that that session? And does their access go away when they log off, or they keep that access? And so that really, in particular, applies to Teams, because as more and more people are leveraging Teams and they're starting to invite external people, clients, customers, other subcontractors, other companies into their meetings, are you able to control that? Are you able to control what your end users, what your other employees are doing on the system? So part of, in our company on the IT side, the biggest thing that we're doing is helping our clients manage those settings, because some of those settings do get a little more complicated, and help them make sure that everything is locked down appropriately, so that you don't have employees creating their own teams or channels within Microsoft Teams, for example, and then sharing information that might not be appropriate to be shared. So it could set up some liability for your company. So some things that to consider and best practices. So you want to have some documented user policies. Our best recommendation always is to start with something in writing, because no matter what, the systems are going to change. You're going to evolve as you go along. Start with the basics. Do you have a password policy? Do you have a policy on what data can be on devices? For protection, is every computer, especially working from home outside of your network where they're not behind the firewalls and the real security, do they have managed antivirus software or endpoint protection on every device that they're connecting in with? That's real important, especially the people that are sharing data, not just watching a presentation. And do you have two-factor authentication turned on? Most of the platforms, Microsoft Teams, firewalls, G Suite, they all have free two-factor authentication options that you can just turn on right now. It doesn't cost you anything other than you have to do it. And really, now you're putting more and more data out there, and you're exposing your company potentially. You want to make sure that you have protection there. And that's where having these integrated platforms makes it nicer, because if we're using Teams for our presentation, and we're also using Teams to manage our data. Now we have one place to manage a user instead of multiple places. So on things to consider, the technology is a moving target, but what are the regulations for your industry? Whether you're financial services, healthcare, or anywhere, you have to protect your data, right? Whether it's financials, whether it's data about your customers, whether it's their personal data, things about them. What are those regulations? Because we can adjust your platform or adjust your settings around those regulations and make sure that you don't have what's called data leak. So data leak is, for example, within the Microsoft Teams platform, both within Teams, but even on the email side, you can put in settings that will say that if I see something that looks like personal data, for instance, a social security number that has the pattern of 3 numbers, dash 2 numbers, dash 3 numbers, or 4 numbers, that looks and smells like a social security number, I'm going to do something about it. I'm either going to flag it or might even block it entirely so that you don't have that information being shared outside your company inappropriately. And so you can really put some controls around that. And that's where the collaboration platform really needs a little more thought. Many of these platforms can also do litigation hold, archiving, retention, backup. And backup's a really big deal because most people say, well, if I delete my email within Microsoft or in G Suite, I can just go to the deleted area and get it back. And the answer is sometimes, if you realize right away, but even when you get it back, it may not come back the same way. They are not really doing a good job of backup. It's sort of like a very temporary backup holding area. And we've seen a lot of clients think that they had that data backed up and it wasn't. So there's a lot of backup packages that can go all around that as well. And it is simplified. Again, if you're on one platform, you need one backup solution. If you're on multiple platforms, you need multiple solutions. So these are just some of the highlights. And I know that we could get even deeper in some of the technical and that idea, but I hope it gives you a little bit of an overview of what some of those things to consider are as you're picking a platform. Many of you have an IT department or at least an IT company you're working with, and they can help walk through these with you. We're finding some of our clients didn't realize that these were some of the things they had to think about until later, and some of them are getting caught with backup issues or maybe data leak issues that they're now circling back and working on, because we'll hear, oh yeah, our people don't do that. They don't really use that platform very much. And what we're finding out is their people, your employees, your team members are using these platforms much more than you actually think. And if you don't have some parameters around it, if you don't have some policies or even just some lockdowns, you're going to find that they're using them in ways that they may not think are a problem, but may actually be a liability for you and your company. So, chance for some questions. The PowerPoint has a mind of its own today.
Does anybody have any questions? Now's your time to plug them. Oh, I see a question. Let's do this. We're gonna do this. Okay, let's see. How many have to be in Microsoft Teams to get to the together setting?
That's a good question, actually. I don't know the number. I know that it automatically rolls out. I'll take a look at that really quick while we're talking about it. But for some of these features, some of you may not have them just yet. And what we mean by that is Microsoft has millions of users and they're rolling them out. So what we see is that as we roll them out, they are not showing up in your system just yet. But I'm looking up what the number is that it'll trigger, because I know that when you have that many people logged in online, it'll trigger it over. And I'll take a look at that. But if you're running Microsoft Teams, one of the things that we keep telling everybody is that make sure that you actually refresh your Teams, meaning that you went down into your system tray, down where your clock is on your computer, and found the Teams icon and right click on it and do an actual quit. When you do quit, it'll really close out Teams, because if you just X out of it, it's actually still running in the background. And then when you reopen it again, sometimes you get new features that just weren't there a few minutes ago. So the two new features though are the together mode, and there's actually one called gallery mode, which gives you the 49. And the together mode, you know, it's not seeing here, but I'll find out. I know that you need to go into your settings within Teams, and I can show anybody how to do that, and turn on that option as well if you don't even see it grayed out in your menu when you go to change your view. So the gallery mode, or large gallery, as soon as you have 10 participants, you can go to large gallery mode and it changes the view. The together mode, okay, I found it, is you can do it with as few as 5 people. And once you have 5 people logged on, that option will become ungrayed out if you already have it available to you.
So we have another question. We do not have a need HQ handle, their headquarters handles, but what does a typical system security review or survey look like for a small business owner?
Well, if your headquarters handles your Office 365 platform, they have access to the back end of taking a look at all that for you. So that's where we would typically go. We would go into the administration, which is pretty in-depth and can be complicated even sometimes for us. Literally, Microsoft has been doing the changes so fast over the 6 months that I opened the ticket yesterday, or not yesterday, last week with Microsoft, because a setting that I knew where it was had moved. So some of that security and all those updates are changing so rapidly that it's hard for us that are even in it on a daily basis trying to figure out where to find those settings next. So if you're looking at an overall security review, we can look at your overall network in general of, you know, firewalls in place and that idea. But typically a company that already has a headquarters handling that has got that managed for you. But if you're a smaller company and you don't have an IT company, or if you want to take a review of your current company, we often come in and do a security audit, and we look at overall how you're operating things and can give you suggestions back.
Okay, and it looks like we have another question. Is poor network quality usually the fault of the provider or the joined users? And what are the best remedies when quality is substandard?
That's a great question. So it's really all of the above. So when we look at quality, number one, we are starting from the base of the provider. So Zoom has grown exponentially, right? They are rolling out new server farms daily. I mean, they just can't keep up with the demand of the calls. So their servers are just getting overloaded. So last week, August 31st, was a huge day for back to school. So on August 31st, they had a significant outage that lasted, I think, 3-4 hours. And even if everybody wasn't out, the quality was extremely poor for that 3-4 hours while they worked on remedying that situation. They just couldn't handle that peak. So while Zoom is working hard, their infrastructure just is being overtaxed. While on the other side, Microsoft, while they are rolling out some of the features, right? People wanted the 7x7 view versus 2x2 simply wasn't enough. Their infrastructure was already there, and they didn't miss a beat when it came to their platform being able to handle the demand of people jumping on really quickly. That being said, how you're connecting and where you're connecting from is important, right? So most of our businesses have really good internet connections, and a lot of people focus on the number, right? I'm getting a gigabit at home, whatever else. But what you're really not understanding is that 100 meg that you have at the office sounds like it's only a lot smaller connection than the gigabit you're getting at home. That 100 meg tends to be dedicated. It's a higher quality connection, so that when you put load on it, it's working better. And when you're using a 100% online platform like Zoom or Teams, even when you have people in the same office connecting at the same time, they're all going out over that pipe and they're clogging that pipe. So if you have a good quality internet connection at your office, you're not really noticing that. But when you go home and now you've got that connection that says you could get a gig or 300 meg or whatever it is, but it's a shared connection. And they've always been built that it's meant for worst case scenario. We're still going to deliver a service, and if you're lucky, you're going to get a gig, up to 300 meg. They're never guaranteeing it. They're not going to guarantee that on a personal connection. But everybody's working from home, and now your kids are on, and they're doing video. Right now, I'm at home, and both my kids are on with school right now. My one's on a Chromebook doing video for his class, and the other one's on an iPad doing video for his class the same time I'm on with you. So if there was any stutter in me talking in my video, that might have been related to that. And hopefully there wasn't there. I think we only saw on the PowerPoint. But you're seeing that, and it's in neighborhoods. Well, we've always seen that, where we've had clients where they're saying at, later in the day, 3 o'clock, our network just bogs down. We can't figure out why. And we are figuring out why. Is even though they had that Comcast business connection, they're sharing that with the neighborhood that's right where their business is. So all the kids got home from school, started gaming, and their network quality went down. And so while they're giving them better quality to that business, they're still sharing it with everybody else. And now we have everybody sharing, and even your kids are working from home, right? They're not inside their school building, so they're using more video. So the amount of video or just internet bandwidth that we're all using across the board has dramatically shifted. And so it's going to make a difference in all of that. And so there's more and more details that really apply into that network quality or video quality. Hopefully that answered that question.
Great. Well, thanks, Larry. I think that's all the questions we have. We just want to thank you for sharing this valuable information with us today and for helping us learn more about which virtual platform is right for our organizations. Thank you to all of our participants for joining us. Yes, we will be emailing you the PowerPoint from today's session. And look, for the recorded entire webinar will be placed on our website probably within a week or so. We're working on that to get those up so that you have them as a resource to go back to, especially during these challenging times for all of us in technology. So we really, really rely on people like Larry and his team and our other members who are can help us through this technology challenge. We want to thank CompFi, formerly Computer Fellows Incorporated, for supporting our technology webinar series. And we invite you to join us next Wednesday, September 16th, for engaging virtual presentations. So you'll find details for that and registration on our website. So we hope that you'll be able to join us then. And we just thank you again all. Thank you, Larry. And we look forward to seeing you all in person very soon.